Hello, everybody. Welcome. Good to see you guys here. We are here to start our Fresh Start webinar, and we're looking forward to sharing a whole bunch with you guys. I'm here with Christine. Hi, Christine.
Hi, Tasca. I'm really excited to be here.
Yeah, me too. Let's jump in. We're going to have, I have a presentation, and then at the end, we'll take questions. But please feel free, if you have questions along the way, to just type them right into the chat. And maybe, Christine, if you see a good question, you can just pop it right into what we're talking about. So,
Absolutely.
all right. So let's see. Moving forward. Yes. First, I'm going to share a bit of my story, and then Christine will share hers. So here are some pictures of me when I was younger. My little cute self holding a skunk there. And this was from a young age. I had really recognized that I struggled with food addiction. I didn't know it was called food addiction, but I noticed that my relationship with food was different than others. That's what I noticed. It was like, how do these people not really care? Like, I seem to be really, I called myself a hog in my mind, and was really focused on the food. And as you can see, I was thin, I was athletic, and it took a long time for the weight to catch up with me, but it did. And, not only the weight, but depression, and, you know, I was even suicidal for a while, and just like just complete inability to put boundaries in, and I just really had some deep struggles in my life, and I could not stop eating that. So this picture is of me at about 270 something. I think these are my high. Here's my before and after picture. So I've been abstinent now for 5 years, and that's what we call it when we are food sober. We kind of use the word abstinent. I haven't eaten flour or sugar, and I've eaten only weighed and measured meals according to my food plan for 5 years. I just passed 5 years, and I'm so excited about that. And what I really want to share in this particular webinar that's making this one different are the resources that helped me get into recovery, the false starts that I had, and the resources that helped me get into recovery. When I first, I'm actually going to stop sharing for a second just so I can kind of see people. When I first found out about food addiction, I was calling myself a sugaraholic, but I tried things like Weight Watchers and other, South Beach diet. I think there's a billion diets out there you could try, and I really found that I could not stick to them. And then I was exposed to the idea of food addiction by reading a book called Bright Line Eating, and boy, did it make sense. And I was like, okay, I'm going to do this. And I took off on my own. I didn't really want to do the program the way it was outlined, but I did quit eating flour and sugar, and I found that it worked for a while, but I slid back into the food. In fact, what I slid back into was popcorn with butter on it, and all of a sudden I had this popcorn addiction, whereas before I would have never cared about popcorn in the slightest because I was eating flour and sugar products. So I was surprised to find out that, oh, I can get addicted to other things. And so I spun back into the food and could not stop. And it's a different kind of pain when you have like the knowledge of something that sort of worked, but I couldn't stop, again. And it was just super painful. Like a year and a half went by before I got desperate enough to go into a 12-step program. And I've been abstinent ever since, and so grateful. And then got involved working with Shift, and certified as a food addiction professional through the Infact program. And wow, has my life flipped around. I mean, the reason I got involved is because it's so much more than, it's not like I'm 110 pounds down, and yay, that feels like, oh, that's the whole world is better now. And it's nice to be thin, but honestly, the weight off of my mind, the self-hatred and shame that I used to just beat myself up with constantly, having that off my mind, I'm not perfect by any stretch, but it is so much better. And so that is why I got involved in deeper into food addiction recovery. And I've been working with Shift for a number of years now. And I just feel so blessed to be on this journey and to have been exposed to so many different types of recovery, not types of recovery, but resources for recovering from food addiction. And I'm happy to share them with you guys today. I'm really excited actually for this webinar. Ever since we decided to do it, I've just been like, oh, this is going to be good. I've just compiled all the resources that I've been lucky enough to attend the International Food Addiction Consensus Conference. There's been two conferences in England over the last couple of years, and I was at both of them, and I've gotten to meet most of the people that I'm going to bring up to you guys in person, and just I feel like I'm just so plugged into all the resources that are out there worldwide, which is sadly not that many, is probably why I know most of them, because it's just not enough for what the world needs. But I'm really excited to share them with you guys today. So on that note, I'm going to pass it to Christine, who also has an incredible story of recovery. Take it away, Christine. Oh, I'll put your slide back up.
Thanks, Tosca. Yeah, so I also, always knew I had an issue with sugar, also didn't know the words for it or, the name for it. My first memory of my mom catching me, you know, eating half a bottle of Flintstone vitamins because that was as close to candy as we had in the house. And I also had a similar experience in that was very athletic, and so the weight didn't necessarily catch up to me until later. I did gain weight in high school, and that's when I also started purging. And so being bulimic and a food addict is a big part of my story. And so you can see this second and third picture, actually was anorexic for a while. I'm 5'5". I went down to 95 pounds with being bulimic. I couldn't stay there very long because I just wasn't a good restrictor. I really ate a lot and binged a lot. And so at my highest weight, I was 229. So I had, gone from 95 to 229. And that was over a 30-year period. And man, did I try everything. It started when I was anorexic. Did inpatient eating disorder treatment, which didn't work for me at all. And I didn't understand why. I tried multiple eating disorder therapists. I lived in New Jersey. I had access to a lot of specialists in New York. None of that helped. I saw a specialist in nutrition. I did CBT therapy, DBT, and then I did some research. I was a nurse practitioner, and so I was working in the health field, caring for other people, and really, doing a lot of trying to drive my own treatment and find resources. I wasn't somebody's story that was always on a diet because I just knew I couldn't stick to a diet. I was bulimic. That was the way I lost weight, but I tried anything that would, try to impact my mind. I did mindful eating, intuitive eating, yoga, eating disorder retreats, meditation, holistic practitioners, acupuncture, and then I even went and saw a shaman, and had past life regression. I then I did research with ADHD and bulimia because I was undiagnosed with ADHD as a woman because I was more inattentive than hyperactive. And so I found a correlation. I self-enrolled in a research study, and nothing was helpful. I did try the 12 steps for 5 years. I didn't really see much recovery. I didn't get recovery. And so I really just felt hopeless. And then things got really bad for me health wise. I had done so much damage to my esophagus that I started aspirating when I would sleep, and I got chemical pneumonitis. So I got really, really sick. And after the last episode of it happening, I just was feeling really hopeless and out of ideas. And it felt like a passive suicide attempt that I didn't go to the hospital or get treatment. And that's when I started looking at food addiction treatment. And I went to one program, CORE, which was amazing. It just wasn't, it was only 5 days. It wasn't enough for me at where I was in my disease. And then I went to Shift, and they had this awesome aftercare as well. And, I stayed longer and really had to take a few months off work, but it was amazing. And so after 30 years of binging and purging every day, it's now been 19 months, and I have not binged or purged. I have what we call food neutrality, where I'm not fighting the food. I am on a weighed and measured food plan, which gives me more freedom than I've ever had. And similar to what Tosca said, so I've lost 80 pounds. And while that is lovely, that is not the biggest thing in my life. And that is the mental obsession is lifted, and just the peace I feel with myself is really profound and significant. And so I'm just, I'm now working at Shift for the past few months. As a nurse practitioner, it was such a profound impact on my life to have recovery for something I'd struggled with for so long, that I really felt, sort of a calling to just help other people that are struggling with food and don't have the resources, or haven't had found the resources the way that I was fortunate to find them, and just want to hopefully help people that don't need to get to the end stage, or where it's really life threatening, and just be a support. So I was really excited to support Tosca in this webinar, and to share some of the resources. Thanks, Tosca.
Thanks, Christine. It's always so powerful to hear your story. All right, we are going to jump into the disease concept of food addiction. Before I really share what the resources that we have, I really need to pin down like exactly what our disease is. There's a lot of confusion around that. And it's super important, because if we don't know what parts of the disease we have, we don't really know what kind of treatment works. Okay, so this disease concept was taken right out of the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, because it turns out, as we have found in our experience, that addiction is addiction. And the substance or behavior actually does not matter as much as like we just have a lot in common. And a lot of us are cross addicted, and a lot of us, it's like from one addiction to the other. So the main thing to really learn here, and I always share this slide, is that there's two parts of our disease. So we're going to start talking about the physical side, which is when we actually ingest our substance. And we have what we call, it's kind of like a Russian roulette game, where when we ingest, like for me, if I ingest flour and sugar, flour or sugar, I can be triggered. And sometimes I lose complete, sometimes I have like a normal reaction, but sometimes I have an abnormal reaction where I lose control. Most of the time, since my disease has progressed to this point, if I would eat sugar, I would not be able to stop, right? Because when I have this abnormal reaction, there's literal things happening in our brain. And a lot of people know now about dopamine and how it spikes, and how we have these dopamine receptors that are, we just like get they get downregulated from too much dopamine, and then we just need more and more of our substance, which is called tolerance. But we develop this physical craving, that I am absolutely powerless over the strength of this physical craving. And that can spin me right into a binge cycle where I cannot, it's like from day to day, it's like I keep wanting to stop, but I can't stop. I find the cravings to be overpowering. Overpowering cravings is how they are referred to sometimes. And then, once in a while, we get the strength to have what we call the national anthem. The national anthem was referred to by Dr. Gutorm, who teaches at the Infact school, as like, I'm swearing off. Like I get enough desperation and panic to like, I've got to stop. And like, I actually pull out of the physical side of the disease and get away from eating the way that the way that I was eating. And so when that happens, life still goes on. We move into or we don't move into, but we get to take a look at the emotional, the mental side of this disease. And we have what's called an emotional barometer. This is just a metaphor for looking at like our emotions build up, whether um, life is good or life is rough. Things that we experience just kind of pile up in our emotional barometer. And most of the time we have willpower that we can use to control ourselves. But when the emotional barometer gets up to this boiling point where I don't know what to do, I can't handle life on life's terms, then I develop what we call mental obsessions. And these are thoughts that using my drug of choice, whatever it is, would fix. Whether I'm feeling low, depressed, had a hard day, exhausted, using food would be a good idea. And it does not matter the level of insanity. Here's where the insanity, this addiction is a mental health disease. There's nothing wrong with our bodies, really. There is, but it's up here that we have the wrong stuff. We develop these mental obsessions, and those lead us right back into eating our food. And then we're spun off again with the craving. So we find that we are actually powerless over two parts of this cycle. This is just a cycle. We're powerless over our reaction to the food that we ingest, and we are powerless over these mental obsessions. When they come, they really take us out. And we might feel like we're changing our mind, or we are responsible for our thoughts and our behavior, and it's like our brains are really hijacked by the substance that we are addicted to. And so this is the disease of addiction. And what we find, though, is that the symptoms of addiction pop out in all kinds of areas of our lives, and we tend to focus on the symptoms instead of treating the disease. Obviously, when we look at like food addiction, our physical health becomes a real issue. But I don't know. I bet you everybody on here, if you really do have food addiction, it's always kind of funny. I pretend like I can read minds, and I'm like, I bet you mentally beat yourself up a lot. I bet you struggle with shame. I bet you have trouble saying no to people, and can't put boundaries in and take care of yourself. And that's part of the addiction, is what it turns out. So all the way around this cycle, we have these symptoms of addiction. They pop out in codependent relationships or abusive relationships. The legal trouble tends to be more for, drugs and alcohol, but people do shoplift, people do get into car accidents eating while driving. So it's not just for drugs and alcohol. A lot of us have work problems. A lot of us get addicted to other things like shopping addiction, work addiction. And then the spiritual problems are just very painful when we don't like who we become. We can't, that was probably the most painful thing for me, feeling like God didn't love me because, I didn't want to keep lying and hiding about food, but I did it, and I just did not like who I was. So the scary thing about this, and just like any disease, when we have a lot of pain from these symptoms, these are the things we want to treat. We want to go on a diet and get thin. And we think that if we get thin, our problems will be solved. Well, maybe some of you here today are amongst the food addicts who have gotten thin or who are currently thin and are absolutely not at peace around food and still consumed with the obsession and the calories and the weight, you know, the scale for yourself. And um, it's not solving any of these symptoms does not actually solve the disease. And it's like whack-a-mole. If you manage to get one thing under control, it tends to pop out somewhere else because we've got to get to the heart of our disease. We've got to actually treat addiction. And like I said, it's a mental health disease. We can't just fix these external symptoms. So, what we look at when we look at this cycle again is that for the physical side of this disease, the solution that works is an abstinent food plan. I mean, if you're an alcoholic, it's to not drink. If you're a drug addict, it's to not do drugs. And there's a way to eat that is abstinent from our trigger substances. So that works for the physical side, but we also need to take care of the mental side. So we need some sort of emotional sobriety. And there's a variety of different types of program that deal with emotional sobriety, but we cannot, it is deadly for us to ignore this part of our disease because that mental obsession just spins us right back into the food. So it was interesting because I was just talking, so the Food Addiction Institute was established, I don't even know how many years ago. I didn't do my research on how old they are, but they have been around for quite some time, and a lot of the people that I'm going to share with you are on their website. They have a current project that they just set up, and I was just talking to the chairperson, Michael Prager, who told me that they are in the midst of a project of getting people to partner with them and to be like a resource of people who believe these three main tenets. Okay, and this is exactly what I'm just teaching to you. Number one, that food addiction is a disease. Number two, that abstinence from addictive substances and behaviors is critical for recovery. And number three, treatment must include an emotional, mental, spiritual component. So these are the things we're looking for when we are going to find food addiction treatment. We've got to have these three ingredients, okay? So what's happening with eating disorder clinics and so many others that's causing them to miss the mark? Because, boy, there's a lot of people out there that talk about food and treating food, and sometimes they even use the term food addiction, but they are not actually treating food addiction. So what's going on with that? Phil Wardell was the guy who founded Shift, and he also founded the Food Addiction Institute, and he's kind of the godfather of food addiction recovery. He came up with this three types of eaters. And we have a lot of confusion between these three types of problem eaters. We can have a normal eater who has obesity, who has basically a physical problem. And then we can have an emotional eater, which we can refer to as eating disorders, who have a physical and a mental emotional problem. And then we can talk about food addiction, which is actually a chemical dependency, a substance use disorder. So that problem is physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual, okay? So the treatment for these is not the same. These are not the same diseases, if you want to call a normal eater having a disease, but a lot of times they just have a weight problem, and the solution is just to, like, you know, go on a diet. Diets do work for some people. They don't tend to work if you have food addiction, but willpower, if you're a normal eater, can keep you on the straight and narrow when you get motivated enough because the doctor says you need to change something. Whereas an emotional eater is struggling to deal with their mental and emotional side of things. So it's like the emotional barometer side of our disease. They can have all kinds of disordered eating, and it's often based on unresolved trauma or needing to develop the skills and to deal with their emotions with something other than food. But what they don't have is a substance use disorder. And the blurriness between these is there's a lot of people who have both, right? But if you actually get to food addiction where you have a substance use disorder, you are now going to struggle with physical cravings that are, I mean, we totally understand the mechanism of where these physical cravings come from. Like the science has this pinned down completely. And we need abstinence in order to do that. We can't do moderate eating like they teach in eating disorder treatment facilities. So we actually need, like I said earlier, abstinence, and we still need to treat the emotional sobriety. And we need a program of recovery. This is a very difficult disease to recover from. So I have another thing that was developed by Phil Wardell here at Shift was this progression of the disease. This is the other thing about the disease that makes things really, really confusing, which is, we're getting marks on here. So this disease gets worse over time, and sometimes people are up, I think you guys can see my little mouse, sometimes if people are coming up in the beginning stages of food addiction, and that what they can do to get out of the continuing with this disease, what works for them up here will not work for someone who's down here in the depths of their food addiction. Like this, when your disease has progressed to end stage or late stage food addiction, the treatment needs to be more intensive, right? So that's just the nature of this disease. And it takes time to recover too. So that's the other thing I love about this picture is like, you know, it takes time for this disease to develop and to get into late stage, and it takes a lot of time for recovery. And, you know, like I said, I'm 5 years in, and I feel so grateful for the stability I have, and I still feel a little bit like a baby. Like I'm learning. So a lot of things I'm learning, you know, in this area here, and it's just, I'm so grateful to be on the journey. So I have a. I wish I could get rid of these red lines here. I feel like maybe I could, but oh yes,
Here,
right here.
it's okay.
I can do it, I think. Yes. There you go. All right. This is a graph that was sent to me by someone that I work with that has been weighing herself for 14 years, and she's quite young. She's in her early 30s. So this goes all the way back to her teen years. And she's about 5'11". So you can see when she came in, she was quite a bit underweight. This is 14 years of her battling this disease. And, you know, she did extreme, and she sent me a list of things that she's tried in the past. She did extreme restriction, like 600 calories per day when she was young. So that's why when she started this weighing, she was significantly underweight. And then she went through bulimia and Adderall. She did regular diet and exercise. She did keto. She did intermittent fasting. She paid for a fasting app. She tried 1 meal a day. She tried nicotine gum, and she's not even a smoker, but she just tried it to lose weight. And she tried weight loss supplements, and she tried therapy. All those things, and this is the journey that she had with her weight. And you know, she had a lot of trauma to deal with, and there's a reason that she's eating, right? So her weight went all the way up into the 300s, and then you can see it drop. And I think the dropping that she did here was when she was using Adderall. And then you can see her getting down. She actually lost quite a bit of weight with keto. And this whole lower section right here, this up and down right here, was her on keto. And then she kind of discovered keto snacks. And then she ended up just turning to, so she was still on keto this whole time right here. But you can see how not at peace she was, even though she did lose weight and was down to like a good weight. This second peak up here was when she got desperate enough to come into recovery. And her weight loss here was just steady. And as you can see, quite, it was a great weight loss. The little jagged here at the bottom, I was working with her. She did some surgeries to do skin removal and had struggled with some swelling. But that was the only thing. And this is her in recovery, this last little tail. And she's almost got 3 years now in recovery. And I just was like, wow, that is a powerful graph of the struggle that we go through trying to find a solution that works. And my goal for this right here would be for me to actually help you skip so many of these years that she struggled and to see you get into something that actually works for you. So jumping to the next slide. Treatment options. We're going to talk about a variety of treatment options, starting with early stage. I'm going to start talking just about the physical side of treatment first. If you're an early stage food addict, like if you're up high on that curve, like you're just coming into it, maybe just awareness and moderation of flour and sugar intake would be enough for you. But if you're middle stage, a food plan might help you. Maybe you can make some exceptions, but maybe you shouldn't have flour or sugar at all. And you'll find a lot more peace. If you get into late stage or final stage food addiction, if this is where you are, then a food plan with no exceptions, a weighed and measured food plan, can bring incredible amounts of peace and freedom. And honestly, you guys, I was very rebellious. I told you I tried bright line eating. I didn't really try it because I didn't really do what she said to do. I did the no flour, no sugar, but I was like, I'm not going to weigh and measure my food. I just had this idea that it was just like a prison sentence. It was for crazy people. So I did not do it. And then when I finally surrendered to just doing it, and so by surrender, I literally mean like I give up. I can't keep messing with food and like doing it my way. I really surrendered my will. And it's incredibly peaceful. I wouldn't trade it for the world. I wouldn't, it's so easy to just eat my food. It's the right amount. I never think about it. It's easy. I had no idea you have to try. If you haven't tried a weighed and measured food plan with no flour, sugar, sweeteners, that is something I really recommend. We commit our foods. There's different ways that we can really get our food plan really locked in so that I don't make decisions about my food. And we say here, people who are in final stage maybe can't stop without help. And that's what that's why Shift exists. There's really not a lot of places you can go to get rehab or detox in person. So that is the sliding scale of what to do with food. But the idea is if you're trying something and it's not enough for you, then try something that's more intensive, right? Your disease is more advanced than you think it is. Let's look a little bit at the emotional barometer. Maybe if you're in early stage, maybe you could just learn about food addiction and pay attention to like how you feel and maybe do some meditation. But if you're in middle stage, late stage, you're going to need some external support. And that's actually the whole point of this slide down here at the bottom. If we're early stage, maybe you can have some self-direction. But when we get to these final stages, it is such a relief to just hand the reins over to a professional and to say, I need help, and to just do what they do. For Shift, we offer support meetings. They're called Shift Strong meetings. They're free. And it is really good to be with others that I can't even tell you that is one of the most powerful tools, is to not be alone in this. So it turns out we don't recover very well alone. We need each other. We need to give and take from each other. The shift intensive is what we call our in-person detox rehab, and we do over 100 hours. This is what Christine was referring to. That really made the difference for her. There's over 100 hours of group therapy, and when you include the aftercare afterwards. It's incredibly powerful. I've been lucky enough. I wasn't like Christine. I didn't get my recovery through Shift, but I've been lucky enough since I work at Shift to get to play client at a couple of intensives. And I was so incredibly blessed by the healing that was just, I mean, it's an incredible process. It would be a gift to anybody to give themselves, but for those of us who are desperate and absolutely needing assistance, and it's so part of our disease that's so crazy is that we think we should be able to do this on our own. I don't know why. I had ovarian cancer. It didn't cross my mind at all that I should well, let me try to handle this, like I can fix myself. I mean, that's just insanity. Of course I'm going to go to a doctor. Of course I'm going to do whatever they say. I have ovarian cancer, which I'm fine. But for food addiction, for some reason, we think, oh, I should be able to handle this. Why, I'm not. We also think that we're failing morally. Like I'm just a bad person. I'm a weak person. That was a thought that crossed my mind a lot. And it turns out I just needed help. I needed help. I needed others like me. I needed support. So the other thing I wanted to say on the slide before I move on is this is my experience with working with other people at this point of what I've seen is that sometimes people come into programs and whether it's not enough for them or whether they don't. I have this metaphor. It's like antibiotics. Everybody, you get sick, you get a course of antibiotics. You usually feel better after taking, for 2 or 3 days, you feel better. And then some people are like, I don't need to finish the antibiotics. And of course, the doctors are like, you know what you're doing? You're creating a stronger strain of this disease that now we need to get a whole nother set of antibiotics because, if you relapse into this disease that's now a super virus or whatever, because we didn't finish the course of antibiotics. We didn't work, we didn't complete the program. I see that with food addiction treatment. I see people coming into, I myself did exactly that with Bright Line Eating. I sort of did it and I felt a lot better and I lost some weight. And then I slid into this other thing, right? And then I needed a more powerful form of treatment. And that's exactly what I see with people. So if you've tried some things and it hasn't been enough, get a more powerful treatment, get a more powerful medication. It's out there. It is. I know because unless you've been to a shift intensive, they are called intensives for a reason. They are quite intense. All right. Did we have any questions? I saw something pop up. Oh, yes. I see your question, Veronica. I've known some people in some of the 12-step programs where they don't allow, her question is foods, what does it mean foods don't touch in this late stage? I know people who they don't make what we call, what is the word I'm trying to think of, Christine? Where you put your foods together and you kind of it's not a recipe, but it's mixing foods together. So if they say foods don't touch, it's like, no, I'm just eating my meat now. I'm not trying to eat my meat with my vegetables, with my fat, with my, blending it together, because some food addicts really are triggered by that. I can't believe I can't come up with the word right now.
So Tina put concoctions in.
Concoctions, yes. We don't make concoctions out of our food. That depends on how intense your addiction is, but sometimes people do that. So that's just something I know. All right, good question. Moving on. All right, here we go. I'm about to jump into just giving you guys a bunch of the resources. This is a slide with 4 of the 12-step food addiction treatment resources that are out there. And, most of us who are late stage, final stage food addicts are working some sort of a 12-step program. There are quite a few of them. There's so many that I don't even know them all, but these are 4 that I know that actually provide, well, sometimes you have to wander around a little bit, but that people do exactly the 3 things I said. Food addiction's a disease, we need an abstinent food plan, and we need the 12-step program is a treatment for emotional sobriety. That is the whole point of the 12 steps. That's what they're addressing. All of these programs have their own little slant on things, and they have their strengths and their weaknesses. And we do have to be a little careful sometimes in each one to make sure that we are in, because we are sick people as food addicts, and sometimes we can kind of wander off the path a little bit. Sometimes with Overeaters Anonymous, you'll find people that can recover while eating things like flour and sugar. And the idea is, this is what I've been told, because I'm not as familiar with this, but there's a lot of emotional eaters, or maybe even normal eaters, mixed in Overeaters Anonymous. So if you're a food addict and you're in one of these programs and you see people doing things that don't work for you, you just kind of got to find your people in there. And there are actually different strains in OA. There's OA 90 days, OA, what am I forgetting? Christine, you talk on it. OA, right. Yeah. And so, and there's, people have different strains of it in each one of these groups. So that is a beautiful group for their 12-step work. GreySheeters Anonymous has a weird name, but that's because they have a food plan on apparently they broke off from Overeaters Anonymous with a gray sheet of food plan. So they have a very set food plan and the 12 steps. FA, which is Food Addicts and Recovery Anonymous, also broke off from Overeaters Anonymous. And they have a very set, not as much of a set food plan as GreySheeters, but it's definitely no flour, no sugar, and the avoidance of any individual binge foods. And they have the 12 steps. Sometimes people in FA can slide a little too far into the physical, focused on the physical side of things and not as much on the emotional side of things. That's something that you can find if you slide into certain parts of FA. And then there's Food Addicts Anonymous, which I know they have a food plan, and I don't know too much about it besides that. So there are 4, and there are more out there. But if you get into a 12-step program, I would really recommend that you get all the way in there, get a sponsor, and work the 12 steps. That's the kind of treatment that we need. It is possible to go to these meetings and to just kind of sit back and be a spectator. That's not going to give you the treatment that you need if you are a late stage or final stage food addict. So get involved and get a sponsor and work the program. Okay.
I would just want to say, I think your biotic analogy was awesome, really about, we get discouraged. And so that happened to me like about 15 years ago. I did try OA. And I did it for 5 years. And, I went to meetings, I found support, I had a sponsor, I sort of did the first 3 steps a couple of times, but I wasn't willing to stick to the food plan. I didn't see a lot of recovery. I didn't get any recovery. And then I really, had a bad taste in my mouth about OA, that it wasn't a helpful treatment for me, that I tried it and it wasn't successful. And, then when things really progressed and I got desperate and a professional said to me, it's either go back to a 12-step program or you get admitted again. And I was like, oh, I'll try another 12-step program. And Well, the problem was my disease had progressed so much that a 12-step alone wasn't enough and I needed treatment, but I really saw a lot of recovery and I realized I had never actually worked the 12 steps. I had not really done it. And there are healthy meetings and there are, unhealthy meetings. There are people that are there for diets with group support, and that is not my people. My people have end stage food addiction and they have to eliminate ingredients. And so I really second what you said about, the not taking the treatment as prescribed, because it's like, yeah, I've done a 12-step program, but I've never actually been through the 12 steps. So we haven't done the program. So, just having an open mind and, like you said, to sit all the way down, I think that's a really important point.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing that. Um, all right, let's jump into some professional resources. Okay. Um, these are all places that and actually not every single one is on the FAI, the Food Addiction Institute website, but I did look at theirs. And I have actually met over half of these people. Of course, Shift, we are we do the in-person, we do these intensives. Sometimes they're in person. Our next one is actually virtual, which is online, but it's not your typical like online program where you're just learning about food addiction. This is like the work. It's like being in a support group. It's just online. But most of the time we're in person and with a very long aftercare. We are 12-step based abstinent program. So our emotional sobriety is through using the 12 steps therapeutically, and we do work them in each intensive. So that is probably one of the most intense things you can do is go to Shift. The core retreat was what Christine was talking about. Do you want to share about that a little bit, Christine?
Absolutely, absolutely. So Core Retreat, it is, treatment for food addiction. It's 5 days, 4 nights, and it is 12-step based as well. And, it's a wonderful retreat that, they really help you get abstinent from sugar, flour. They do a weighed and measured plan. And then they take you through the first 3 steps when you're there. So, it really is, they really understand food addiction recovery. The two facilitators are both in recovery and had gone through that program. And one of them did do the Infact training, I think it was last
Mhm.
year. But,
Mhm.
I think the challenge with Core is that they don't really have a formal aftercare program. So it's shorter than Shift. And they do connect you with a sponsor that helps you go through the 12 steps. So to me, Core is an amazing, treatment option for somebody that's in early or mid stage of food addiction, that could just use a little bit of help support getting abstinent and support getting tucked in with a sponsor. And then they have a great community of people that recover. They have a lot of recovery in their community. So I think it's a really good treatment program. I was just in end stage, and so it just not for me. But it's a great program. I
Yeah.
definitely it to people.
Yeah, I got to visit them twice. They're in Minnesota and sweet, sweet ladies. And yeah, they are definitely treating food addiction. And I love that they operate like once a month, I believe. So is that right,
Yeah,
Christine?
once a month, and that's for their main treatment. And then they have another treatment program that they offer a couple times a year called Encore that then takes you through steps 4 through 9. So it's a second retreat for people that had already completed the first one, to give them an additional boost and sort of time to get deeper in their step work together.
Mm,
So
that's cool.
it's great.
Yeah, awesome. Milestones Milestones in Recovery is in Florida, and we are affiliated with Marty Lerner is the guy, and they treat eating disorders and food addiction. So they're one of the few eating disorder treatment facilities that actually will offer an abstinent food plan and understands food addiction. Many of the eating disorder treatment facilities deny the existence of food addiction, think that um, a weighted measured food plan is restrictive, and it can be very confusing for someone who has like anorexia or something. So Milestones is one of the few places that navigates that. The beautiful thing about Milestones too is that they can take health insurance, and people can stay for, I think, like 90 days sometimes, depending on the recommendations, of course, their health insurance companies. So these can be longer term stays, and we've sent clients back and forth between us many times. So we also work with Turning Point of Tampa. We have sent clients there and had their clients as well. They are treating other addictions, but they also will allow a weighed and measured abstinent food plan and support people in their recovery from food addiction. Aglon Recovery actually is over in Jordan, I believe. It is the guy that runs that. I think his name is Rocky. I got to meet him in England at the last conference, and he actually came through Shift and then was so inspired and developed his own very much like Shift treatment over in Jordan. So if you happen to be in that part of the world, or if you want to go over there, he's over there treating food addiction. Bright Line Eating is, obviously, I told you that that's how I came in, is a beautiful, beautiful program. So I love the science that she teaches there. And they do boot camps every so often. They have one coming up in January. And but everything they do is online, and they really do encourage people to get involved and to do the kind of outreach that we need. And like I said, I did not do that when I did my own version of Brightline. So Brightline can be a beautiful recovery program it works for many, many people. And I don't know if it's like didn't work for me because my disease was worse, or it just didn't work for me because I wasn't desperate enough to get connected. It's a little tougher to get connected when you're not in person, right? So you actually have to pick up the phone and get connected. Of course, it is always encouraged and always promoted, and they have all kinds of support calls all the time going. It's a beautiful program, and I'm super grateful for it. It was the beginning of my journey. Renaissance Nutrition Center, that's Teresa Wright. She teaches at the Infact school. She is one of the longest running nutritionists who treats food addiction. She's been in the game a long, long time. So she's helped support people with different food plans. And again, she's not an in-person treatment, but she does work with people on treating food addiction. And same with Sugar X Global. They have a lot of incredible information, and I believe they do online support groups, but they are not doing in-person treatment. So if you're somebody who needs in-person treatment, which many of us do, you would be looking at Shift, Core, Milestones, Aglon, or Turning Point of Tampa. And there's also one in Iceland. I couldn't find the website for it because Esther does it, but there really is not a lot of places in the world that you can go for in-person treatment. But these are some excellent resources. The next page I have here is more of, if you want information on, there are a lot of people out there doing individual, like one-on-one clients, and the Food Addiction Institute is going to be a place where they're going to register. Like I said, that project is ongoing right now, so check into it. If you're watching this webinar later in 2025, Michael Prager told me they would be up and running in about 15 weeks. And he told me that several weeks ago, so it's coming. Addictions Unplugged is Dr. Vera Tarman's website, and she is always collecting people that are working with food addiction. So she has quite an extensive list, although I do have to say some of the people on her list might use the words food addiction, but please make sure that they are treating both components of the disease, both the abstinent food plan and the emotional side. It's so interesting how people tend to focus on one or the other. And there's a lot of talk about keto. Keto is not a treatment for food addiction. Keto is a diet, unless you are combining it with, actual treatment for emotional sobriety. So Shift, here we are. We are basically, everything we do is for food addiction. That's all we do. So we are as in person and as intense as it is possible to get on this earth. Yeah, well, I mean, I guess it could get more intense if we had a longer term, because our stays are usually 1 week and we have 10, 11-week aftercare afterwards. That's virtual. So, someday my dream is that we have a long-term house that people could stay and just stay safe as long as they need to. But right now, that is what we do, and it is very impactful. And the other thing about Shift is and I'm going to offer this in just a minute too, we have free 30-minute consultations with trained food addiction professionals like Christine or myself or Tina. And we really listen to your story and help make recommendations based on where you are and the different. This is where like that antibiotic metaphor really would pay off. Like, what have you tried? Like, have you gone through a 12-step program, but were you really working the program? And it takes a food addict to really, get into where are you exactly and what do I see that could help you take the next steps into recovery. So I would highly recommend, if you're watching this and looking for resources for treating food addiction and you haven't done a 30-minute consultation, it's free. You just you go to foodaddiction.com and click to set up a consultation. And you'd be talking, most likely these days, you'd be talking to Christine or Tina. And, you're going to get recommendations based on what you're saying. It's not, you don't have to face this alone. You have to lead your way through all of this. So that would be a huge resource that I would definitely advise people to take. The Infact School and Bitten's Addiction are both, Infact is based in Iceland, and Bitten is over in Sweden, and they are both doing training for food addiction professionals. So I noticed on Bitten's site that she has a list of resources of people, and I got to meet a bunch of them in England that are treating food addiction. So you could find someone there that's working. Again, always make sure that they're treating both parts of the disease. The Infact School is beautiful. That's where I got my training, and Christine and Tina, all of us got our training through the Infact program. It's affiliated with, Esther's treatment program over in Iceland, and it's beautiful. The teachers at the Infact School are like Susan Pierce Thompson and Dr. Barry Tarman and Teresa Wright and Marty Lerner and like all these big names, Robert Lustig, and it's just been for me, it's been great. That's why I know about all these resources, is from attending the Infact program. So that is the list of things, and I will put in the show notes, I will put links to all of those things again so that you can easily access them. The next step I would suggest people to do, like I mentioned, was the 30-minute consult with one of us at Shift. And we also have our free Shift Strong meetings, which I will also again give you guys the link to that. A real powerful tool is the Yale Food Addiction Scale. If you're not sure where you're at as far as the severity of your disease, this Yale Food Addiction Scale was developed by the scientists, I think Ashley Gerhardt, doing her studies on food addiction, and it's a validated assessment. So it's been scientifically validated, and we offer it here for free at Shift on our website. The Infact school offers it for free. You can find a free copy, like a PDF floating out online, but it's a real pain in the neck to grade, to score. And we've figured out a way to score it here. So if you aren't sure what your level of food addiction is, I would start there. Knowing what you're dealing with is important. If you just have a very, very mild case of food addiction, then you're going to take different actions than if you have a severe or late stage, final stage case of this disease. You really need help. We do coaching, we do counseling, we do meditation classes, and the next program that we have is coming up January 10th through 17th. Like I said, it's a virtual intensive, which we started during COVID because they shut us down, for COVID. And it was like, well, we got to do something for people. So they were like, I don't know if it's going to work, but we might as well try it. It totally worked. It worked so well, and it has allowed people to come that would not have come in person due to maybe financial restraints or travel can be really hard for some people. So it's allowed people to come that might not have come in person, and it is incredibly powerful. It's the same program that we do in person. You're spending from morning till night online with a small group. We do small groups, like 10 to 12 people, and there's 2 therapists and food addiction coaches. And well, actually, this one's going to have 3 therapists, and it's just incredible. Like I said, it's over 100 hours of intensive group processing and therapy and aftercare and 12-step work. And it's just, if you're having trouble getting started, this is the stronger antibiotic right here. It just is. Like, by the time you're done with this, you've done some deep inner work and really gotten to the heart of some things. You've got yourself a crew of people that you've been through it with. Like, you are plugged in. You've got a whole shift community. You've worked the 12 steps with a professional therapist. It's just, the benefits are just incredible. And like I said, I got to do it, and I wasn't even coming out of the food. I was already abstinent, and it was just an incredible gift to me. I'm so grateful that I got to go through that. So let me stop sharing now. Oh, wow, I talked for a whole hour, everybody. Jeez. And I had something on my heart just before this started. I went to visit a friend here where I'm at in Colorado, an old family friend. And this is my dad's friend from childhood, and he's literally died on the table so many times from a heart attack. Like, I don't even know how many. Like, I've literally lost count, like 4 or 5 times. He's been on the table, dead. They've started his heart back up. And to see him, I love him to death. To see him, and he's supposed to lose weight, and he's not. And my sister, who doesn't understand everything I do, was like, why wouldn't that wake him up? And I was like, that's addiction. That's what addiction is. It doesn't matter that he died 4 or 5 times. He's still eating. He can't stop himself. And she's like, well, people do get better. So look at you, you're better. And I'm like, yeah, but people don't know about food. They don't know that. He doesn't know maybe that if he stopped eating flour and sugar completely, the cravings would become manageable. They would go away. You could have food neutrality. Maybe he doesn't have hope that whatever, emotions he's can't face without the food, that he could face it if he had a treatment program. It breaks my heart. I mean, people are across the world are dying of food addiction every day. They're dying of food addiction, and there is treatment out there, but we've got to get the message out. That's my biggest passion right there. Is like, there is hope. There is hope. I never would have thought that food neutrality was a real thing. Like, it's a real thing. I can't believe I can be around people eating X, Y, and Z, and I'm like, looks good, but I'm good. I'm not hungry. I'm fine. I have my food. It's a miracle. It's a miracle. And I'm so grateful to be sitting here and be able to share that with you guys. So I'll stop talking because I've been going for a while. Does anyone have any questions? This is just open time. You're welcome, Katie. And you can unmute yourself and ask questions, or you can type them in the chat, either way you want. We'll just hang out for a few minutes and see what kind of questions we got. Christine, you got any comments?
I was glad you went over the Yale addiction scale because I think that's really key, when we were talking about, where people were. One, do I have a food addiction? And two, where do I sort of fall in line? So absolutely would recommend. And, they can do it for free on our website for sure. And they get an email by you, calculating their score, an
I'm
amazing.
the one who scores them, guys. It's me.
So would definitely encourage people to do that because I think that's a great jumping off point if you're really not sure.
Mm-hmm. Okay, we got a question from Veronica, right? Am I
Uh,
saying your name right, Veronica?
oh, I see Tiffany.
It's
There
actually Veronique, but that's okay. I answer to Veronica too. It's not a problem.
I'm Tosca, and I answered all kinds of versions of Tosca.
I'm sure. Yeah. Yeah.
Yes.
So I was just asking, can you give an idea of what the daily schedule would be like for someone on a virtual?
Yeah. So it's interesting, the virtual, because we could be offering it to people across the country, and sometimes we even have people in Europe joining us. Or so we pick like a start time, and it's usually like, I want to say 8 a.m. Pacific, which makes it about, what is that, 10 Eastern? Am I doing that right? 11 Eastern? Yeah, so it might be something like that. So when they start, they will do usually what we do is about 3 groups a day. It's like 2.5 to 3 hours each group. Um, the sessions can involve, like, the whole group is on there with a therapist, and they do, they'll walk through meditations, they'll let people do inner work. We take people through exercises where they're sharing secrets and getting really vulnerable with each other. We do emotional processing, which is like, I was like, what is going on? But people get a chance to really, like, just make space for your emotions, which we usually are trying to not. That's actually a big deal for us addicts, is like, we don't want to feel our emotions. So there's a lot of time for that, and for um, relating to each other and sharing, and what am I trying to say? Like, we're not alone. The biggest thing is to, like, be sitting in a room full of people, even though it's a virtual room, and be like, hearing someone else share and, like, maybe cry about something and being like, I totally relate, me too. And that the power of that me too with each other is just breaks us out of our shame, and being able to really face reality of what we're dealing with. So anyway, so the sessions would be like 2 or 3 hours, and there is a break for like lunch and like dinner, except for it doesn't fall at the right time for everybody on their time zone. So sometimes people have to eat lunch and dinner in the meetings, which is fine. And of course, the East Coast people go to bed before the Pacific people go to bed, but they're still encouraged. So even when the meetings are not on, the Zoom room is open, and people are encouraged to stay in contact with each other and come on and chat, chop their vegetables together on Zoom. So it's like, you're online, but you're not, you're asked to put aside all your work, no contact with the outside world. And this is a good question I'll jump in on with: how is the abstinence handled? Everyone has a coach, as well as the therapist. And every meeting, I love this about Shift, every meeting at Shift begins with, I am Tosca, I'm a food addict, and I am abstinent right now. So we just, bring the abstinence issue out. Sometimes people struggle a little bit as they get going, but we get support. There's just all kinds of support around it. People will stay online as they eat meals together, get on the phone with each other and eat. It's 7 very intensive days. And we see people get abstinent through it. That's the part where we were like, I'm not sure this is going to work. It works. It works for almost everybody that joins. So that is that question.
You had asked about the Acorn food plan.
Just in general, what is it like?
Mhm.
So it has no flour, no sugar, no sweeteners, no caffeine. It eliminates the bulk of triggering foods that are like binge foods for many people, like cheeses and nuts and things. No alcohol, right? Because alcohol actually is a sugar. Really, it's not because it's alcohol, but because it hits our body like a sugar. So um, all it's weighed and measured. And also, I have found in my experience, and I've seen a lot of food plans now, um, it is one of the more, it's the gentlest food plan I've seen where it actually has more food than some of the food plans. And that scares people because I want to lose weight. I want to lose weight. Like that's the solution. That's not the solution. Getting stable is the solution. And people do lose weight on our plan, but in a very gentle way. So people are not hungry. We have 4 meals a day. We have a breakfast, lunch, dinner, and then a metabolic at night. So that's just a general description of it. It is very gentle. It avoids all the triggering things that are very common, and it has enough food that you're not hungry. So it's a beautiful food plan. Beautiful. Any other question that I missed, Christine, in the list?
No, because I think you answered about Tina and then Muna dropped.
Yes, someone
Yeah,
had their hand up. She's gone?
she's gone. Yeah.
Ah, that's too bad. All right. Any other questions? Happy to stay on and answer them. It was good to see. Oh, I see Pam unmuted.
No, I was just going to thank you all for it.
Oh,
But my next step will probably be just to call for the, you know,
Did
what I
you-
wanted to ask. I don't have any questions right now, but I'm sure I will.
yeah, set up that 30-minute consultation. Yeah, that is actually foodaddiction.com. That's our website. You can tell we've been around for a long because that's probably a prime website people want. We've had it for a long time. So foodaddiction.com is all you need to remember. And once you get there, the link to set up the consult is right there on the front page. Jennifer.
Hi,
Thank
I'm
you.
Jennifer. I'm a sugar addict, and this was great. I wanted to just ask your opinion on something. So today is day 53, abstinent, no sugar, no flour. I'm clean and sober through
Nice.
AA. So
Yeah.
I'm coming up on 6 years, and I am so into the 12 steps. I'm really, really active in AA, and I love it. Alcohol isn't even my primary addiction. I went into treatment for Adderall because I'm a believer that one disease, many outlets. And that's where my higher power led me to AA with the treatment center I went to. So I have like my strong recovery there. And then as far as the food, I don't have any weight to lose. In the last 5.5 years, it was very apparent that I was binging on sugar, and that I know that happens when you put down a substance. So I'm not happy with my behavior lately, so I knew I needed to make a change. So I was doing all this. I found you guys. I've listened to every podcast and read everything in the last year, and it's just amazing the research that's out there. Incredible. Susan Pierce Thompson actually was one of the first people I started listening to, and then I listened to your podcast. I listened to everything. And Bitten Johnson's website, the only 12-step program on her website she sends people to is to SCAA as far as 12-step.
Okay.
Sugar and Carb Addicts Anonymous. So
I was going to guess.
I've been doing that, the last 53 days because I want some sort of 12-step.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm not keto or carnivore. I guess I'm more paleo. I eat more like Gray Sheet, and the only reason I know about Gray Sheet is because my dad's girlfriend is an old school Gray Sheet, 40 years clean. So I know that works. So I eat like that. So I was gonna ask you, like, from your personal opinion, I mean, because I think it's, oh, and I also joined Sugar RX Global. I joined
Okay.
that last week because I'm a huge fan of Anna, and I can only make 2 meetings a week because I work full time, but it's worth it because I just want to have her for 2 meetings a week. But that's not 12 step. So is there a 12 step that you recommend? I mean,
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, that's a good question because I think you have a higher power and
correct.
and you've found your way um to the sugar and carb addict. I don't know a lot about it. I knew there were more food 12-step programs than I even know the names of. If it's working for you, this seems to be the way that you're
I
going.
don't know. There's a part of me that, I mean, my higher power gives me so much energy and so much, like, I think this is a gift that I'm able to do all these different things. This is my 3rd thing I've done today for food. And I just, as long as I keep filling up my recovery tank, that's what's important to strengthen my foundation. So maybe it's not a bad idea that I go to try an in-person OA meeting or an in-person. That's what I'm thinking.
I'm so glad you brought that up because I meant to say that when I was on the 12-step slide was like, look around in your area and whatever you can find in person. It is really healthy for us to get in person, as you know.
I think that would be great.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I love the 12 steps. I love them and I live by them and I wake up every morning. I bought every food reader. So I have the OA daily readers, the FAA, the bright light, and I love it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Beautiful. Thank you for coming on here. And I'm so grateful that you found something already. Like, half of the people that I put on my list, you already know them all. So you've been doing your research, that's for sure.
I have, and you know what? I shared this morning that I'm so grateful for all of you, I call you guys pioneers in the space, for the knowledge and the education that you're able to give. Because if it wasn't for you guys, I wouldn't have the understanding that sugar addiction is real, what it does to the brain, and I'm part of the movement. I want to get rid of it too. So, I'm here to work on myself.
So speaking of you being part of the movement, you wouldn't be the first person that's come on a webinar. Check out the Infact school because maybe there's a place for you. It's relatively inexpensive. It's like I don't know, like a 8-month what is it? 8 months or 6 months? Yeah, check
Are
out
you
the
in
Infact.
Canada?
No, I'm not in Canada. The Infact school's in Iceland, but she speaks English and it's
Oh, is
online.
that Esther?
Yeah, yeah.
I've listened to lots of. Oh, and the woman who does the podcast, I love her voice, Susan.
Susan Branscombe. She's
She's
great.
so great.
Yeah, yeah, yep. Well, feel free to
I will.
check them out because maybe maybe your higher power is drawing you in. You want more information? There is plenty more information out.
Okay.
That's for sure.
Thank you guys so much. Thank
Yeah,
you.
good to talk to you, Jennifer. Good to talk to you.
So Tina had a good point and just wanted to share that besides sugar and flour addiction, there's volume quantity addiction.
Yes, which is why the weighed and measured food plan is that's exactly what I tried to just get off of flour and sugar. And then I found out, oh, I have a little bit more. I'm not just a sugar addict, I'm a food addict. So very grateful for my weighed and measured food plan. And I weigh my food on the dot every time, no exceptions. And that's where the peace comes from.
Absolutely. And I agree, I can binge on any food, any vegetable. I've eaten multiple jars of pickles at one sitting, so the weighed and measured is a treatment for volume.
Yeah. Yep. Yep.
Awesome. Well, this was great.
Yes. Thank you guys all for being here. And
A fellow Flintstone vitamin binger.
I used to love the Flintstone vitamins too, the purple ones. I remember.
That was our candy back then. That was all I had in my house.
I'm glad you said that because I would say warn people, please check your supplements and other little things you're putting in because if you keep yourself in a triggered state, you don't get free from the cravings. And that's That's been my experience. Just any tiny bit that I'm ingesting can trigger my cravings, even if I'm unaware of it. So,
Mm.
yep.
Yeah.
Great. Well, thanks everyone. Thanks,
Thank you
Christine,
very
for sharing
much.
your story.
Thanks,
And
everyone.
thanks all of you for being on. I hope we get to see you guys at some 30-minute consultation soon. Join us. All right.
Thank you.
Goodbye,
Thank you,
everyone.
ladies. Bye-bye.
Bye.